Welcome to the 3DownNation podcast. I'm Justin Dunk, joined by John Hodge and JC Abbott. Hodge said we might take a week or two off. It was only one because we just love talking football so darn much, right, fellas?
Yeah, I missed you guys. I like to see your faces.
You know, we have a whole YouTube channel where you can look at them all day, right?
That would be a little creepy if I just lay around my house staring at videos of you all the time.
Well, hey, it's what our viewers do all the time. Hopefully.
I'm pretty sure when I'm on screen, they flip it over. So they're just listening to the audio and not witnessing whatever's going on here. But
no, you guys are looking sharp. You stepped up your game, and Hodge is taking some shots from some people for his random hat collection. But Hodge, I quite like it. You're a versatile man. You have different tastes. You're cultured. It's just fine if you want to wear a hat that happens to be the same color of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's not a big deal. Hodge isn't a homer. Stop giving him grief about his hat choices.
Oh, okay, right. It wasn't a shot at the hat collection. It was a shot at wearing green, which, I don't know. I like the color green. I don't know what anybody has against it. I guess in Bomberland, some people do, and that's fine. But no, I like green. I like to wear all the colors of the rainbow.
Is this week's toque Red Blacks red or Stampeders red?
Canadian flag red?
I don't know what I'd call this color. It's almost like a soft burgundy. I don't know.
And more importantly, is it going to slowly creep up your head like the last one and try and make an escape during the podcast?
If I've done a head shave within 24 hours, that is a problem with wearing toques because your head doesn't have any grip to keep the toque down. It does literally as you talk, climb up the head. So I usually opt for a cap or a snapback, but I've refrained from wearing those on the pod for the last couple months because they have team logos, and I mean, if we're putting our image out there talking about sports, it looks a little weird to be wearing teams from other leagues. So I've refrained from wearing those. But if the people want to see them, I can bring them back. So let us know.
No, I like that idea. JC, I was listening back to our last podcast, which is actually really good. Congrats to you guys on being so good on the pod. But I completely forgot about how hilarious the starting of Jumbo Cheese was. It was a YouTube comment. And I remember thinking that comment, it was like a full paragraph, was outstanding. And you took it in stride and it sort of stuck around. I mean, I shouldn't even say sort of. It has stuck around. That was hilarious when it first happened.
Yeah, I don't know if I would call the comment, outstanding. It was somewhat homophobic at the time, but
I mean the Jumbo Cheese part. Sorry,
just the Jumbo Cheese part. Was a stroke of brilliance by whatever basement dwelling creature wrote that on YouTube. Truly, an astounding use of my initials. I could not think of anything better.
My favorite nicknames are, sometimes it's oh, his name is, Mike, so we all call him Big Mike. It's well, I mean, that's not a bad nickname, but it's not very creative, right? Or it's oh, his name is Robert, but we all call him Rob, or we call him R. I love the nicknames where it's this is JC Abbott, but we exclusively call him Cheese. I love the nicknames where there's no connection because I think it's the most creative. Right. And sometimes you'll see, especially in the olden days, we're talking back in the 40s, 50s, so often it'd be oh, well, his name was, Ed Jones, but everyone just called him Crazy Legs. And I'm yes, where did these nicknames go? These are amazing. So I think Cheese is right up there, honestly, for best. If we can call ourselves as members of the CFL, as part of the ecosystem of the CFLs, CFL related, I honestly think Cheese is one of the best CFL related nicknames out there. Because modern sports has terrible nicknames. They've basically disappeared.
For the people that don't know, JC's initials are JC, obviously, but the comment that came in was instead of calling him what the initials stand for was Jumbo Cheese. And I think there might have even been a picture of a cheeseburger there. But JC, what does JC actually stand for? Tell the people.
I'm not revealing that information on the
Come
pod.
on, bro. We asked for tough questions.
I'm an international man of mystery. I'm not revealing my private information. No, it's funny because whenever I'm coaching or dealing with groups of people, they always want to know what my initials stand for, and I never tell them. It's like a closely guarded secret. And then often when my players graduate, I take them aside and I let them in on what my name actually is. And they love that, like, suspense. They spend long road trips just shouting out names at me, trying to guess what it is. So I can't reveal it on the pod.
At least you reveal what it currently is until you legally change it to jumbo cheese.
Exactly.
I think it's Jean-Christophe, but that's just me. That's my guess.
It's not French.
That's about 30% of the prospects from the RSEQ now that we're getting into draft mode. Jean-Philippe or Jean-Christophe. JC, JP. You got to love it.
The French have like 6 names, and they like to put them together all the time.
This is true. And Justin, when on the pod are you going to reveal that your last name is actually Dunkmeister? You keep hiding that information from the public, and I think it's grossly dishonest. I really do.
I will say, man, too many times people hear the name Dunk and they think for some reason, I don't get this, it's short for Duncan. I'm like,
oh,
when did I ever say Duncan?
You get Justin Duncan, really?
Yeah, I don't get it. They think it's short for dunk. They think it's D-U-N-C, which is a gross way to spell dunk. No, it's slam dunk in your face, D-U-N-K.
I, like, shockingly often get Hodges, like H-O-D-G-E, with an S. And I do think Hodges is a slightly more common last name than Hodge, but, like, Hodge is not an uncommon last name. So I don't know why I get Hodges. But whenever I do, I say it politely, but a little bit passive aggressively. I just say, no, there's only one of me. It's not plural. It's just me here.
Sometimes you get Arthur too.
If I do get Arthur sometimes. Yes, that's true. But
Arthur's worked in
there. If it's a family gathering, please, by all accounts, call us the Hodges. But if it's just me, it's just one. I'm only one man. It's just Hodge. But
that's such a Hodge line. You don't want to be having people thinking that you're in any relation to Duck Hodges.
I mean, Duck Hodges seems like a cool guy. I don't know him personally. The Bombers just signed a linebacker with I think his name is Johnny Hodge or Johnny Hodges.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to the inevitable stupid training camp article that I get to write about us having almost the same name. That'll be fun, assuming he makes it to camp. But yeah.
Love it. Let's see what names we get into on the podcast, fellas, as we discuss testing numbers from the 2026 CFL Invitational Combine.
Former Roughriders spilling tea about departures from Saskatchewan.
A shocking coaching move in the CJFL.
An impressive Pro Day performance by a former JP Metris Trophy winner.
A Canadian running back retiring.
And Henry Burris's football future. But first,
our guy, Dunkmeister, exclusively reported Nathan Rourke's contract extension details, including $684,700 in hard money, which includes $160,000 in marketing money. The marketing money remains consistent in 2027, but the hard money increases to $699,700. For some reason, we didn't just round that up to 700. I admire our attention to detail here. And then in 2028, the number is $704,700 in hard money, $150,000 worth of which is marketing. JC, is this new deal fair for both Rourke and the Lions?
It's absolutely fair for both sides. Now, could Nathan Rourke have legitimately commanded more? Absolutely. I think if he wanted to press his market, he deserves $800K. He deserves more than that. I think there are teams that would absolutely blow up the quarterback market for Nathan Rourke. But this is a solid chunk of change, and he's structured it in a way that it is not going to cripple his team against the salary cap, right? This deal is really only $524,000 against the cap because the marketing money is exempt. That's a really good deal for an elite level MOP quarterback. And the BC Lions should be thankful that Nathan Rourke is willing to play for this amount. In terms of the marketing money, I think the other thing that should be noted is this is a guy who's earning it, right? Nathan Rourke has been in the community out here in BC almost every single day. You look at social media, he's at a different event constantly, moving about town, moving around the Lower Mainland, visiting schools, hosting events, going to different functions. He's earning every cent of that marketing money, which is sometimes a question when deals like this get signed. So I have no problem with the structure. I think it's a good deal for Rourke, and I think it's a fantastic deal for the Lions.
If Nathan Rourke went on to the open market as the number one player in the Canadian Football League, there's no doubt he would have higher offers. But if you're Rourke, you have to look at all the factors here: franchise stability, playing within the same offense, Amar Doman, the ties that he has to the West Coast. So it makes a lot of sense for him to be out there long term. Nathan Rourke can be marketed in many different ways, including, and I know you guys don't think that I like junk food, which is mostly the case, being on a bag of chips out there in BC, right, JC?
Well, it sounds like that's going to happen. I've reached out to the company in question. I'm now blanking on their name, but they have not responded. I think there's going to be some form of announcement here down the line, but there was a sneak preview at a trade show, and some images of these chip bags have been circulating out there on social media.
You know, it's about time. I know in Saskatchewan that over the years there were Darios and Fantouz flakes, and there's a lot of good player marketing that happens there. I think to a degree the same could be said in Winnipeg. I would let Hodge speak to that more in depth though. And I think in various CFL cities it does happen to varying degrees as well, but we need more player faces out there being marketed, not just locally, but especially nationally. And Nathan Rourke is a guy that you can definitely market nationally in this country. I think that he could be involved in a bunch of different brands, and I hope that it happens for the betterment of anybody involved in the Canadian Football League. So I think this deal is ultimately fair. Rourke is smart. He's going to look at all of the factors before putting pen to paper here, especially on a long-term agreement. And this is long-term for the Canadian Football League. So I think that when you're all sides looking at this, Amar Doman, Ryan Rigmaiden, Buck Pierce, Nathan Rourke, and his agent, his family out there as well, that it makes a lot of sense to have security, but also be compensated fairly, I would say, as the league's reigning MOP.
Yeah, Nathan Rourke's the best player in the CFL, and he's making $525,000 against the cap. So this is the best deal that any team has on any single contract, period. Done. Like that's my answer. This is, I'm not saying that Nathan Rourke's underpaid. If he wanted to make more money, he could make more money. Right. And as you guys have touched on, it's important to Nathan that he's close to his hometown of Victoria, BC. He's set up roots there. He's important on and off the field in that community. And he's being compensated as well to market the crap out of this team, which he's done all off season. I'm not even in BC. And every single day, it seems like I'm seeing new photos or a new YouTube video or something that he's doing, whether it's something that's, you know, really kind of intrinsically valuable, like, you know, showing up to a school and reading to kids, or it's like something really goofy. And it's like, oh, on YouTube, Nathan Rourke is going to, I don't know, he's like grading Adam Sandler movies. Like they've had him do some really silly stuff. Silly doesn't mean bad, by the way. I'm not saying it's bad content. I think it's content that appeals to, you know, some of the younger folks that the BC Lions are surely trying to attract to their games and, you know, try to build Nathan Rourke as a star, not just for hardcore BC Lions fans in that part of our country, but also young people in general. So, but yeah, like Nathan Rourke, if you can get him for $525 on the cap, which is essentially what he's making on the cap in 2026, I think you are laughing all day if you're the BC Lions. This is the best value for any player. Nathan Rourke, if he went to the market, I'm not sure he gets $1 million on the cap, but I I think he's getting at least what would you guys say if he went to the market? What would be the least amount of money that Nathan Rourke, if he didn't care about the team, didn't care about the situation, if he just wanted to maximize his dollar figure? I think he's bare minimum getting 850, probably more than 900. What would you guys say? We'll start with JC.
I would agree with that assessment. I think it's in that 850 to 900 range. Now, if you're talking on the cap, I don't think that would all be on the cap. I think any reasonable team would structure it with at least $100,000 of marketing money. You know, that's not uncommon with some of these quarterback deals. Rourke's certainly higher in BC than most, but I think any team would try and utilize that. And owners of teams, the people who are actually footing these bills, would be far more willing to spend that money when you have a legitimate star like Nathan Rourke, who I think is one of the few players in the CFL who quantitatively puts butts in seats. That changes that dynamic. But certainly in terms of total hard money, I wouldn't be shocked if he touched that $1 million mark. Maybe not this time around, but if we're talking in 3 years when this contract is up, I think that's well within the realm of possibility with how the salary cap has been increasing.
Right now, I think the floor would be $800,000. And I think JC's right there that if it was truly a bidding war, it could get up over $1 million per season. That seems wild to some Canadian Football League fans. But remember, the cap has gone up, and it wasn't too long ago, 2019, that we had not one, but two quarterbacks in the CFL making in and around $700,000 or more per season in Bo Levi Mitchell, if I can speak, and Michael Riley. So I think when you look at how much the cap has gone up and consider to JC's point that if indeed Nathan Rourke ever does get to the open market, which I don't think the BC Lions or Rourke would want to do, at least in the prime years of his career, that he could potentially get to that $1 million mark per season or over. And of course, that's hard money, and we're talking about marketing money being included. And there's some other, incentives that CFL teams could certainly throw in there. But I think that's a realistic sort of price range for Nathan Rourke.
I think the last element we do have to discuss in terms of this deal is that the Lions need it to be affordable on the cap. This is a team that has spent some big money on other players, Justin McInnes, Matthew Betts, Keon Hatcher, Jonah Tavai, even some of their additions like Casey Sales are not making small change and are much less affordable deals in terms of their relative salary cap impact. Now, I can't speak with any authority on the Lions cap situation. There's lots of missing pieces and assumptions there, but I've run some of the numbers in a cursory fashion, and this team is very much up against that salary cap. There's going to have to be some decisions in training camp or, some injuries that alleviate some of that pressure. Having a guy like Rourke take a little bit less and structure in a way that is healthy for the salary cap allows you to pay that big money to some of the other stars. And I think that's really smart from his perspective if he wants to win championships in BC. As you reported for 3DownNation.com, Dunk, Zach Collaros agreed to restructure his contract with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for the 2026 CFL season. The 37-year-old QB took a $50,000 pay cut, but still remains the third highest pay at his position in the 3-down league at $550,000. All hard money, by the way. Is this a big deal, little deal, or no deal?
JC seems to think it's no deal. I think it's a little deal because Winnipeg did spend in free agency to get two big pieces there in Jarrell Broxton, making him the highest paid American offensive lineman in the league, and then Jake Ceresna at well over $200,000. Hodge, I'm sure, has the exact figures, but to me, it kind of makes sense when you look at that and the fact that I'm not saying that the run is over, but it's clear that the Blue Bombers feel like the championship window is closing and you want to get the most out of that roster. So you go and add this talent, you adjust Collaros' salary for 2026 to make it fit, And I'm not saying you take one last run, but you take a hard run at the Grey Cup in 2026. So I think it makes a lot of sense on all sides. And there have been some people out there criticizing Collaros for continually making $600,000, but he stayed flat on his salary and not necessarily pushed the envelope. And now he is going the other way when the salary cap has gone up 2 straight years and taking a $50,000 pay cut. So I think it's commendable from Collaros' side. Makes sense for Winnipeg to fit that high-end talent on the roster like I talked about with Broxton and Serezna, namely as free agents, but also paying some of the other guys that they needed to pay to keep, who have either been there for a long time or guys that they want to keep around. Collaros, like a Brady Oliveira in the backfield and Nick Dembski as a receiver, Pokey Wilson, there's a decent list there. So I think all in all, from all sides, this does make sense, but credit Collaros for taking the financial hit.
Yeah, the thing that surprised me about this is an intrepid reporter went to the Blue Bombers in November and asked general manager Kyle Walters if the Bombers would be asking Zach to renegotiate his deal. And the quote was, quote, "We've never been big on renegotiating. Zach's earned his contract. He led us to all those Grey Cups playing at a high level. We need to do a better job at surrounding him with better support, because you saw flashes again this year where he's still a guy that can get her done out there. We need to surround him with better support," close quote. That reporter was me. And the reason I asked the question is because Zach was making too much money, period. Zach Collaros is a future Hall of Famer. He's been a very good quarterback in the CFL for a very long time. And he's battled through injuries. He's ultra tough. He was in town last month in February, and he looked great. He seems prepared, like his body. He said he's feeling really good. So, I am not a Zach Collaros hater by any stretch of the imagination. But, we just laid out what the BC Lions are paying on the cap for Nathan Rourke. It's $525 in hard money. Obviously, yes, there's a bunch of marketing money on top of that. So Nathan Rourke is making more than Zach Collaros. But, Zach Collaros should not be the third highest paid quarterback in the CFL. He was going to be that behind Nathan Rourke and Chad Kelly. We just saw Trevor Harris, who's, a couple of years older than Zach Collaros, but is also a guy who had a better 2025 than Zach, right? He led his team to a Grey Cup championship. He stayed healthier than Zach did. He had better statistics than Zach did. And he's making $450 hard, with play time getting him to a little over $500,000. If Zach Collaros hit the open market this offseason, how much does he get? I think he certainly still gets signed, but I don't think he's making more than Trevor Harris at that 450-ish mark. I don't think he's making more than a guy like Vernon Adams Jr. in Calgary, who's around that same dollar figure. The market is the market. And I don't think that paying players based on what they did 3 or 4 years ago makes any sense. I think it makes a ton of sense if you're the player. Hey, I was great 3 years ago. Pay me a bunch of money. That sounds like a great equation for the player. For the team, not so much. You need to pay the guy based on what they're going to do that season, what they're still capable of. Now, obviously, based on that quote from Kyle Walters, the Blue Bombers still believe that Zach Collaros can play at a high level. And I do think the Bombers have done an excellent job of improving on and off the field, right? They've brought in Tommy Condell, who's Zach's dream offensive coordinator. They've upped the receiving core with guys like Tim White, Tommy Neild. They've upped the protection, as Justin noted, with Jarrell Broxton coming in as arguably the best pass-blocking offensive tackle in the Canadian Football League. The team's run game, I think, will also still be among the CFL's best. So I think ultimately Zach has been set up for more success, but you can't deny that the last 2 years, he's essentially been flat, touchdowns to interceptions. This past season, he threw 17 touchdown passes and 16 picks. Obviously, the rookie offensive coordinator didn't help. The injury to Dalton Schoen didn't help. Pokey Wilson spending half the season in the NFL didn't help. The protection issues didn't help. But, I'm sorry, those are pedestrian, mediocre at best numbers. So I think the Bombers were smart to renegotiate this deal. And honestly, I think they could have taken Zach even further if they wanted to. Is Zach Collaros going to choose to retire rather than play for, let's say, $400,000? If he wants to retire instead of play for $400,000, he can. But I don't know what else he's going to do that's going to make him $400,000. I think Zach is super talented when it comes to the media. I thought he did a great job during Grey Cup. I think he could have a long coaching career in front of him. I think he's a very intelligent, talented guy. But again, players get paid based on what they have done the previous season and their projection for what they're going to do the next season. Paying Zach Collaros for being amazing in 2022 is a little bit silly. The same way that a lot of the best players, look at the CFL All-Star list from 2022. A lot of those guys aren't even in the league anymore, right? So I thought that the Bombers were smart to renegotiate, even though evidently the team's talking out of both sides of their mouth a little bit, saying they were not going to do this and then, in fact, doing it. I don't know if that's because at the time they did not intend to do it and something changed, or if this was always the plan and things just worked out and they didn't want to publicize it in November. That's not for me to speculate on. But what is for me to speculate on is the quarterback market in general. And I still think 550 is a little rich for Zach Collaros. If it was 550 total and 100,000 of that was marketing money, great. But none of this is marketing money. It's all going against the cap. And Jake Ceresna at 235, Jarrell Broxton at 250, Jonathan Moxey, 130. I think Jovan Santos Knox is a pretty cheap deal, but like Tommy Neal, 175. Like there are a lot of big money additions this team has made. I don't know how they're going to manage that salary cap. Brady Oliveira getting to 290 as a running back.
What's Tim White at?
Tim White at I think it's 210. Right, that's big dollars. So we'll see how it comes out in the wash. But I thought the Bombers were smart to do this because Zach Collaros was not worth $600,000 based on the performance, not just last year, the last 2 years. He's essentially flat. I think it's 37 touchdowns with 34 picks the last 2 years. It's just not good enough.
I could not have said that better myself, Hodge. And to allude to the shot Dunk threw across the bow in his segment, the reason why I thought that this was not no deal, but a very small deal, is much to Hodge's point. Yes, it's nice that the Bombers will have an additional $50,000 on the salary cap to spend. Kudos to Zach Collaros for taking that pay cut. I think it's a smart decision for all parties. But he was an overpaid quarterback before this deal was renegotiated, and he's an overpaid quarterback now. At 550, he's still making more against the cap than Nathan Rourke. And I will go a step further than Hodge and ask you, Dunk, point blank, and you, Hodge, point blank, if you had to stack up all the starting quarterbacks in the CFL and you had to field a team tomorrow, where would you pick Zach Collaros? Because for me, I'd take him over Drew Brown, probably. And then I think there's a conversation between him and Cody Fajardo at this stage of their careers. I might lean towards Zach in that conversation, but the fact that it's a debate for the 8th spot, to me, indicates that he is egregiously overpaid. Now, Chad Kelly is a wild card here, I'll admit, because he hasn't played for a full year, but assuming full health and ability, right, we've seen a ceiling there that I don't think Zach can reach anymore. And I would frankly rank him either 7th or 8th in the league among quarterbacks right now. That's not worth 550.
I think it's easy to say Nathan Rourke is far and away number one in those quarterback rankings, but you can't just assume that Chad Kelly regains his MOP form. I don't think that's a safe assumption, or the Argos might have put him on the field at the end of last season if they thought he could get to that level. And I think it's more about him mentally being away for a year and then having that comeback coincide with a gruesome injury. It is not as easy as it seems to come back from those injuries and just go back to playing. You think in your head that it might happen again. And I think that's where Chad Kelly needs to get to mentally to get to that level. So I don't think that's a safe assumption. I want to see it from Chad Kelly. I think it's a fair question overall, JC, but I think you could probably make an argument for Zach Collaros higher in those rankings or as low as you had him. I think it's just a difficult conversation to have without some of the context, right? If Zach Collaros, for example, was available on the open market and there were two teams who needed a quarterback, I think he might get close to the salary that he's at now, or he would be right in the mix there with sort of the middle echelon paid quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League. And I think last year is an outlier because of Jason Hogan being a rookie play caller. And it seems like a lot of the issues, let's call them, that were going on behind the scenes. Yes. And the year before that, I think, is the one that mainly I would have questions about. But let's see how he does with Tommy Condell. And then I think we'll have a better idea of where he's at. I know that's not ranking him there, but I just think it's difficult when you look across the league because injuries can cause that variance. Like Trevor Harris in 2024, after he had suffered the injuries and then came back, people were still questioning him, but he goes out and wins a Grey Cup. So a year, I think, can change a lot of the perspective, but there's no doubt that Zach Collaros, and I think he would admit to this if you gave him truth serum, needs to play better football. That touchdown to interception ratio just ain't going to cut it in the Canadian Football League in 2026.
Well, now that Dunk hasn't answered the question, Hodge, would you like to take a crack?
I'll answer the question, and I will start by quoting Zach. This is him in February after I asked him specifically about his play. Quote, "The numbers are what they are. They haven't been up to the standard that any quarterback wants to play, and you want those to look better. At the same time, each week, you kind of just do what you need to do to win each football game, and that looks different from time to time, but certainly you'd rather be throwing 35 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and that's always the goal," close quote. So Zach is self-aware. I do think he's a realist. He understands it, and by the way, I've also got the exact numbers. So the last 2 seasons combined, he's thrown 34 touchdown passes and 31 interceptions. Obviously, that's not good enough. The 3 seasons prior, 21, 22, and 23, he threw 90 touchdown passes and 34 picks. That is sensational. A 3-to-1 ratio. That's more touchdowns than anybody else threw for. So this is what I'm talking about when we talk about the decline. And again, if it was a 1-year decline, I think you just write it off as, receivers got hurt, rookie OC. It is what it is. It's now a 2-year trend. Zach did say he's got more of a say in the offense now than he has in around 5 years, which I take to mean, yeah, Paul Appolise gave me a lot of say in the offense and Buck Pierce did not. And it's worth noting that the decline of this offense started during the latter portion of Buck Pierce's tenure and continued into Jason Hogan's tenure. This was not an offense that started to struggle under Jason Hogan. That said, I will answer JC's question. I would put him at 7. I would put him over Drew Brown and Cody Fajardo. I'm obviously taking Nathan Rourke as number 1. In my second tier, I would have Davis Alexander as a riser and Trevor Harris as a crafty vet. I might even throw Vernon Adams Jr. in that mix. Certainly Bo Levi Mitchell is in that mix, 2 East Division MOP. I think there's an argument really for those 4 in any order, right? Maybe you take some points off Mitchell because he's older. Maybe you give some points to Davis Alexander because he's younger. I think Chad Kelly is a wild card at this point. He's a tough one to rank at his peak. He's the second best quarterback in the CFL, in my opinion. But, I mean, it's possible he's going to see the field and stink out the joint in 2026. It's also possible he's going to be the MOP. So I just think he's a wild card. I don't really want to make a projection for whatever Chad Kelly is at this point of his career. And then outside of that, I mean, yeah, I think he's better than Cody Fajardo and Drew Brown. But again, I think the distance from like 2 to 8 on that list or 2 to 9 is relatively small. And we could be sitting here a year from now going, whoa, okay, my list now is way different. My ranking is way different than it was previously. The same way that last offseason, Drew Brown might be much higher on people's lists than maybe right now. Or maybe a year ago, people are down on Vernon Adams Jr. like, he got benched in the season, blah, 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 versus, hey, he goes to Calgary, plays pretty darn well. So it does change year to year, as Justin also, I thought, illustrated well with the Trevor Harris example, a guy who was a backup not long ago and is now at the age of 40, a starter who's won a Grey Cup and played at a really high level. So it depends. But yeah, I would probably put Zach in and around 7 right now. And he's making more money than most of the guys ahead of him.
There's no doubt he has to have a good year. And as we parse through the quarterbacks, it helps give me a little bit of clarity. I, for one, even just from a pure leadership standpoint, would take Zach Collaros over Vernon Adams Jr. He started on fire last year with Calgary, and some people are going to scoff at that, but he hasn't shown that he can get it done in the playoffs in the Canadian Football League. And Zach Collaros, on the other hand, his playoff numbers aren't that great, but he has been a part of a consistently winning team over a long period of time where his team has made the playoffs and actually won playoff games in Grey Cup. So I think right now I would have him over Drew Brown, possibly Cody Fajardo, Vernon Adams Jr., Chad Kelly, as you said, Hodge, is a wild card. And then as you go through the other quarterbacks, like Davis Alexander has to stay healthy, but he's clearly a difference maker. So I'd rather have Alexander over him. Nathan Rourke is a shoe-in. Bo Levi Mitchell. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody else. Trevor Harris, I think, would be above Zach Collaros at the moment. He's playing at such a high level. He's so precise as a passer. So I guess that would make me put Collaros around 6 right now, depending on Chad Kelly, the wild card. In an exclusive interview with you, Hodge, Henry Burris said he's currently weighing coaching and media opportunities following his departure from Florida A&M University. What are the odds we see him back in the Canadian Football League in the future?
Well, it was a great chat with Smilin' Hank. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to watch it. It's also on our podcast feed. And by the way, we thank everybody for supporting our kind of special episodes that we've been dropping over the course of the last month or so. We've had really positive reception. Some of them, like the numbers aren't great on YouTube, but like have been absolute gangbusters on the audio side of things. And a lot of them have helped generate written articles that have done really well. So we thank everybody for their support. And if you want more content like that, please, of course, let us know. We want to give the people what they want. That said, I mean, Hank seems to be loving life right now. His 2 sons, Armand and Barron, are going into Barron is a receiver at Florida A&M. He's going into his redshirt sophomore season.
Armand
What did I say?
The receiver. You said Barron.
Oh, my apologies. Armand is the receiver. Barron is going into he's finishing his grade 11 year, what they say the junior year, and going into his senior year next school year. And he's a kicker, so he's looking to garner an opportunity to do that at the post-secondary level. And Armand and Burris are both Canadian, by the way. So they could potentially be in the CFL draft in the not too distant future, which would be pretty cool. A team getting the opportunity to draft and sign Henry Burris's son or sons as national players, not American players, which is pretty cool. But essentially, Burris said, look, I had a great media career with TSN, with CTV, but every time I got onto the field, when I was live at a game or doing color commentary, I could feel my palms sweating, like just wanting to get back out there. And he realized that coaching was something he desperately wanted to do before all was said and done. And full credit to him. He's been doing it now for 6 years. He said he does want to keep on the positive trajectory he's on. He started off as like a seasonal kind of position coach, quality control guy. And at Florida A&M, he was the co-offensive coordinator. And by the end of his tenure, was the acting head coach of the Rattlers. So I don't think it's realistic for him to walk in and be a CFL head coach right away. And obviously with the operations cap the way it is, there's very few openings now, right? Back in the day when you could just clean house and fire entire staffs and bring in new people, it wasn't uncommon in the CFL to have 3 or 4 openings each offseason. Now it's like 1, if that. Right? We're going to have seasons as long as this cap is a thing where there are 0 openings for head coaches. So I think if you're Henry Burris, you probably have to come up as like a quarterback's coach, maybe do that for a year or 2, try to get the OC gig and then maybe the head coaching gig. But he did say he's going to put family first. He missed a ton of time, obviously, with his 2 sons while he was playing in the CFL for darn near 20 years. And he's taking full advantage of this opportunity. He got, again, the chance to coach Armand at Florida A&M for 2 years, which is a super cool opportunity that I think most football coaches would love, is the opportunity to coach one of their own children. And he's looking to do private coaching. He's already working with quarterbacks in Florida. There's a huge market for it down there. So he's still actively coaching, some of it in person, some of it through online video software, but there's absolutely a chance he could be up in the CFL. He did, however, cite the operations cap as an obstacle. This is something we routinely hear from people. And according to Burris, he's still in contact with a ton of people who played in the CFL or have CFL roots in one way, shape, or form. And they're like, yeah, on the one hand, I'd love to go up and coach. On the other hand, like, the money's just not good enough for me to validate a 6-month period away from my family working those super long hours. So this is yet another example of how the operations cap is holding this league back, at least in the opinion of these prospective coaches. And I know some people might say, oh, what a surprise. The coaches want more money. Well, yeah, on the one hand, fair enough, fair criticism, but also if there are smart, innovative coaches who can help make the CFL and its players better by just getting paid a little more money, I feel like that should be a good investment for the Canadian Football League, which literally makes its entire revenue stream from being a football league that people want to watch, right? The better the football, the more people will want to watch, theoretically, right? I think that's a pretty reasonable formula to suggest. So it was a great chat. It was really nice hearing from Henry. He's a super nice guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing where he ends up next, be it in the collegiate ranks, in the professional ranks, as he weighs his opportunities.
I think it's wonderful that Henry is taking this time with his kids. You know, Barron's still in the house, not yet graduated, getting the chance to coach his son in university. I'm sure that was a special opportunity for him. I think once Barron is out of the house, when they're both off at university, if an opportunity doesn't present itself for him to, you know, coach his kid in a similar fashion, I think that's the moment when he would be best suited to come up to the CFL, when the, you know, chicks have left the nest, as it were. They've gone off to do their own things, and now he can come back up to Canada and do what I think he is extremely well suited to do, which is be a coach, an offensive coach in the CFL. I think his success, his trajectory, the things that he's accomplished south of the border speak for themselves. I think his reputation in Canada would carry a tremendous amount of weight, and I think he would be a quality addition for any CFL team that wants to upgrade, you know, their quarterback situation or their offense in general. So I hope we do see Hank up there. The coach's cap, a very valid point, something we're going to discuss a little bit in the next segment as well. It cannot be overstated how much that thing looms over every piece of news and the way things that work in this league. It has its reaches into all different areas that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And I think it is truly limiting the league in a number of ways. If you don't have quality coaches, or you're not getting the best quality coaches, then you can't have the best quality players, and you will not have the best quality product on the field. And while I understand there is some validity to limitations in terms of having a financial cap, for example, the fact that it is both a financial cap and a number of coaches cap hurts you in different ways and prevents young up-and-comers and older seasoned coaches from coming to the CFL. I think it's something that needs to be seriously addressed. I don't know that you get rid of it entirely, but you need to tweak it and you need to change it if you're going to have it in place.
This Henry Burris interview really wants me to hammer on the football operations cap, because you have people in the league saying that it doesn't even go up with the rate of inflation. And you think about Henry Burris as an example. Would the CFL be in a better place with Henry Burris as a coach in the league? The answer is absolutely yes. So as a league overall, I get the cost certainty. And I'm not saying that that is not great for a business or for an owner to know about. But if you want the best people in any business, you have to pay them what they are worth. And the CFL is lacking some of the best people in front offices, on coaching staffs, to develop into future coordinators, head coaches, general managers, and the like, because you can barely live off some of the wages that these coaches and football operations people get for putting in tireless effort to make these franchises go. So I think that needs a long, hard look. The player salary cap has gone up 2 straight years. There should be some sort of similar mechanism for the football operations cap. And it's not a bad thing. If anything, it's going to benefit the league. And I can't think of any better example than Henry Burris. If he doesn't believe it's financially worth his time to come up here and coach, then why is the league not looking at the football operations cap more seriously? I'm not saying spend millions of dollars and lose a bunch of money and put the teams into bankruptcy. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you're diligent with your spending, it can actually pay dividends in the long run. And how is it not the same, in terms of the player salary cap, where it can go up year over year, at least with the rate of inflation? The league would be better off with Henry Burris, Tanya Henderson, and many others in it. But it needs to be worth their while. Otherwise, they're going to go find other careers, other jobs, other positions that pay them commensurate with their experience, knowledge, etc., etc.
Well, to your point, Dunk, the reason why those mechanisms aren't in place is because, unlike the players, coaches aren't unionized, right? There has been increases in the football operations cap. We should note that it has gone up every year, not a substantial amount and not as much as coaches would like to see it to keep up with inflation. It has increased. But if you want a mechanism in there to revenue share like the players, or to see prescribed increases every single season, the coaches have to unionize, right? Like, that is how those things happen, is collective bargaining. That's how the players have gotten the advances that they have gotten. And unions have positives and negatives, just like anything else. But ultimately, there is very few protections for these coaches and football ops staff right now, and they are not getting what they are worth or what they deserve.
Well, and even if we don't completely axe the cap, right? If that's not an option, I think that's a non-starter for the Board of Governors. I think one of the genuine concerns is like, well, let's say theoretically, there's a head coach, and I don't even want to throw a real person's name. Let's pretend there's a hypothetical CFL head coach who's just won 5 straight Grey Cups. I think the concern is like, well, someone's going to offer them $1 million a year, right? Like, CFL head coaches, I think the lower end is like 350, the higher end is like 550. That's what I've been led to believe is kind of the rough range, right? And now all of a sudden, like, so the head coaching market is exploding. Like, I think that's the type of situation the league wants to avoid, right? So what if you even said, okay, we're going to cap head coaches at X amount, which, yeah, theoretically the head coaches could fight.
Training opportunities, lowering tuition.
But then you could say, and we don't want
in improving
staffs to grow to 50 people. So let's cap it at, like, you can't have more than 12 coaches, or maybe you can't have more than 15 coaches, and you can't have more than 5 scouts, right? Whatever. Like figure out a number that makes sense, figure out a number that works, but is bigger than these tiny staffs that we currently have, where people are being asked to do 3 or 4 different jobs and inevitably just not being able to do them all at an elite level, which would help the CFL be a better league. So even if the option isn't, hey, let's completely scrap this and go back to, potentially a Pandora's box, Wild West system where anything can happen, could we just do this in a smarter way that we're not killing the product and limiting the product, trying desperately to I think there's a happy medium is the point that I'm making here. Can we find a way to simultaneously avoid a situation where these costs are going to get out of control while also not inhibiting the growth of the game? That I think is a pretty simple, reasonable request.
I got an idea. Take the money that you're going to invest in changing the fields, because we know these teams aren't cash flush, and invest it in the people in your league, namely the coaches and the players. That's how the game is going to improve overall in terms of the talent level. not necessarily changing it. And the league won't even give us the projected 60 touchdown data, or should I say they won't even make it public. So invest your money smartly, because I think it's pretty easy, as you guys have laid out, to draw a direct line from how good your coaching staff is to the quality of football on the field, and then the revenue that you can derive from the fans coming and watching it in the stadiums and also on television, live streaming, in the rest. I think this is an area where Stuart Johnston, he talks about wanting to work at pace and also asking the question why. And if the answer is essentially, well, that's how we've always done it, and the football operations cap, its life isn't that long, but it needs to be examined. Why are we limiting what the front office and what the coaches can make? Do the presidents have a limit? Why is that different? There's no limit on what the presidents can make. They're not a part of this. And if you talk to people, they'll say that there are ways that teams try to get around it, just like, they're going to push the envelope in every other business anyways to try to be right up against the rules, if not towing that line. But I think it needs to be examined. And Hodge, your idea actually, and some head coaches are going to hate hearing this, about capping the head coach is at least interesting and worth talking about, because you look at the structure now and it's the guys at the top that are making all of the money. And I'm not faulting people for getting their value. I'm not at all. I'm just saying that it affects people lower on down the line, and it affects the young up and coming talent that you can get when you're looking at what you could make at an entry-level job, let's say in the CFL as a coach, versus an entry-level job in any other business. The CFL, just like any other business, should want to entice the best and the brightest in all avenues within its business, including coaching and football operations. And right now, that's not happening due to the number being limited, as JC pointed out, the actual number of people that could be employed, and that amount of money on the cap. It needs to change. If the coaches are going to unionize, I think that could potentially help it, but I think it needs to change. And the CFL needs to make sure they're allotting their dollars smartly here, instead of randomly changing field sizes and hoping that's going to help the game. We know quality coaching helps more high quality football being played. And I don't think there's anything wrong with football, to be quite honest, but this is one area where there needs to be some real change.
JC, you did an exclusive interview with Tanya Henderson, the first female coach, full-time coach, in CFL history, for a wide-ranging conversation that covered her departure from the BC Lions, lack of accountability for incidents of workplace harassment, and her fears of stagnation in the league's coaching pool, tying into exactly our last topic. What are your takeaways?
My number one takeaway was that Tanya is one sharp cookie. This was an incredible conversation. We touched on a variety of topics that I didn't even expect going into it. I thought she was thoughtful. I thought she was very open. And unlike a lot of people who have worked in the CFL at one stage or another, I don't think she held back. I think she held people accountable. I think she was willing to criticize the status quo. Now, for those who want a little bit of an insight in terms of her departure and the reason why she wasn't coaching last year, when there was a coaching changeover with the BC Lions and Rick Campbell and his staff were let go, obviously she was not retained. And Tanya made the choice that she had put down roots with her and her family here in BC. She was doing a number of things in terms of coaching at a amateur level with young women, starting up a tackle team here in BC, and she didn't want to move. She made the decision that the demands of CFL coaching and picking up roots and going to a different city would have been too much at that time, and she wanted to do what was going to fill her well, and I commend her for it. But her thoughts in terms of what it was like to be an outsider coming into a CFL coaching staff, I thought were fascinating. And her discussion in terms of the lack of opportunities for women were especially telling, because I think a lot of people would assume when you look at the numbers that someone in a position like Tanya would come out and say, yes, there was a ton of sexism. That's why there's no more female coaches in the league. After there was her and Nadia Decour in Ottawa, there are now 0. I think you could very well point to that and say there's some degree of gender discrimination, and that's why programs like the Women in Football program haven't produced a ton of coaches. That wasn't her point. What she came out and said was very much related to the conversation we just had, where she believes that because CFL coaching staffs are so small and so tight-knit, coaches don't want to necessarily widen their staff in terms of new ideas and newcomers. They know who they're comfortable with. They have the people they've worked with, and they're not giving opportunities to new people. And that has led to sort of a homogenous viewpoint across the league in terms of how day-to-day operations are approached, different offenses, different defenses, a lot less variation and a lot fewer new ideas. That was something that she found frustrating coming in, is everybody had an idea of how things were supposed to be, and it was very rarely critiqued, which is something that new voices can do coming into an organization. With that number of coaches capped because of the football operations cap, you're not necessarily getting the newcomer, the intern, the woman coming out of the program who's getting that opportunity, the diverse hire, the guy who's coming up and said, hey, I want to work in the CFL or in professional football. I'm willing to sleep under my desk at the facility and work for minimum wage if you just give me an opportunity. You can't afford that to people anymore, and therefore the viewpoints and the lenses through which the league is being viewed internally are fewer, and there is less willingness to broaden perspectives.
Her take about the lack of team accountability when it comes to discipline in the league, I think really stuck out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be better, flat out. You find players for ticky-tacky violations week in and week out and name them, but you can't tell us when teams are disciplined. It doesn't make any sense. It's obviously not transparent, and I don't think you're being fair to your players when you name them, put them out there to blow in the wind and take all of the bullets, and you don't do it with the team or team executives or people in football operations or the coaching staff. It needs to be the same. And I thought the way that she talked about that and described it was very well done. But what I can understand is the way that some people couldn't understand what she was saying. She was talking about the teams. There needs to be more transparency about team discipline in the Canadian Football League. Period. End of sentence. And I thought Tanya spoke to that very well.
Yeah, I thought it was brilliant the way she handled that. And for the record, for anybody out there, because I got a ton of comments on that article, we're like, well, why don't we just, take Chad Kelly out back and shoot him, right? That's what she wants. I brought up Chad Kelly's situation as an example. Tanya then took that. She could have focused on Chad. She could have said there needs to be more punishment for players. She could have said that 9 games wasn't enough. She didn't. Our discussion had very little to do with Chad, other than that was the context of a discussion for, was the organization held accountable for its culture, for how that situation was handled, and was the league transparent enough in conveying that information to the public and to other people working in the league so that there was a system of support and people felt like things were properly handled. That was the discussion that took place. And I think anyone looking at that situation can say, well, we don't know how the Argos were handled because the league was opaque. Right? They didn't share that information. None of those things are bound by an NDA because of the lawsuit that was settled. The CFL was never sued. It was the CFL's responsibility to come out and say, either the Argos did this right, or they failed in this way, and here is their punishment. They chose instead to protect their own, focus exclusively on the player side, and leave a tremendous amount of doubt in my mind, in terms of how these situations are handled from a personnel perspective. Dunk, you interviewed former Roughriders Jake Mayer, Malik Carney, CJ Rivas, and AJ Allen about their departures from Saskatchewan in CFL free agency. What did you learn?
Each situation to me was uniquely different, but I think the theme, people are going to be surprised at this, was money, at least in a couple of instances. For Jake Mayer, I think it was a combination of the Ottawa Red Blacks making him the highest paid backup in the Canadian Football League. And even though he didn't say it out loud, the possible opportunity for playing time because Drew Brown struggled with injuries in 2025, and him sitting behind Trevor Harris, who only missed one game last season, going, okay, looks like if I go to Ottawa, I got a better chance to play there. Ryan Dinwiddie did some scouting on Jake Mayer as he was added to Calgary's negotiation list. They didn't actually cross over there, but it seems like they're aligned with the opportunity. And I think that his path to playing time is possibly better in Ottawa, depending how a number of things play out. The money part also doesn't hurt, but it was clear to me that Saskatchewan allowed him to make that decision. He would have been welcome back there. It would have been less than the $200,000 in hard money that he got from Ottawa, but that was a possibility, and he had nothing but good things to say about Jeremy O'Day, the front office, and Corey Mace and the coaching staff in Saskatchewan. When you look at Malik Carney, I think that one was simple. It was money. He was made the highest paid American defender in the CFL salary cap era, and that just wasn't going to fit in Saskatchewan in their salary cap. And Ed Hervey hasn't been shy about wanting to invest on the offensive and defensive lines. Edmonton really needed a pass rusher. He was far and away the best one that got to the open market. So Carney makes the move to Edmonton. For CJ Rivas, that situation was completely different because you had a guy in Antoine Brooks Jr. who's on a rookie contract, looked pretty good at strong side linebacker, even though CJ Rivas was named a CFL All-Star at that same position. But if you're the Riders, you're looking at 44 pending free agents, which was a league high coming off winning a Grey Cup, and you have to make some financial decisions yourself. So you go with Antoine Brooks Jr., who's on a rookie salary for another season. And as much as you would have liked to keep CJ Rivas, the Riders didn't want to insult him with a lower offer than what they thought he could get on the open market. So that ends up playing out as CJ Rivas goes to the nation's capital. AJ Allen, to me, is the most unique one of the group because he really had to get through a lot of emotions when it became clear to him that he wasn't going to go back to Saskatchewan. Likely, mostly for financial reasons, because the Riders seem to prioritize re-signing Samuel Emelis, Kean Schaefer-Baker, and a bunch of other pieces on that roster, especially Canadians. You know, look at the safety spot, Nelson Lacombo and Jackson Ford, Tavon Campbell on that defense as well. And, you know, at some point, what A.J. Allen was going to command on the open market, I feel like the Riders just knew they weren't going to be able to pay. But that hurt, that raw emotion that Allen shared with me, and I thank him for his time, was something that is real. And it hit home because I feel like oftentimes, fellas, we're guilty of this too. The media and the fans just think of these players as a star name on the depth chart or somebody in free agency that is going to add and really boost a team. But they're people too. They have real emotions. A.J. Allen wanted to go back and re-sign in Saskatchewan. He gave them all he had because they drafted A.J. Allen. They developed A.J. Allen. They helped A.J. Allen become a legitimate Canadian starter in the Canadian Football League. So it took him, it seems like, at least a couple weeks, to work through all of those emotions, from shock to frustration to, okay, I'm going into something completely new here that I didn't necessarily think was going to happen. That ultimately leads him to go to Ottawa. There were some other teams in the mix for A.J. Allen that he told me. Calgary, he said he talked to, Hamilton as well, but he felt like Ottawa wanted him the most, and certainly the salary that he got, $240,000 in 2026 in hard money and $250,000 in 2027 in hard money, helped that decision along. But I don't think it was actually all about the money for AJ Allen. I spent about an hour with him on our interview that was recorded, and you felt the emotion. You felt like you really got to know AJ Allen a little bit, as much as you can in about an hour. The guy that you see on the field strapping up the pads for his entire career so far in Saskatchewan, and now the one that's going to move to Ottawa. So different factors, different situations for the guys. And yes, money plays a role overall, but I think there were other factors at play with every one of the players that you listed, JC.
I thought it was great to hear from so many guys, right? I mean, obviously the Saskatchewan Roughriders did a good job at keeping a lot of that Grey Cup team together, but you're never going to keep an entire Grey Cup team together. And so I was so thrilled that we got the chance to hear the unique perspectives of all these different guys. And again, people seem to have really liked the interviews. So if you want us to keep them coming, tell us, let us know who you want to hear from. We're going to obviously be heading, JC and myself, to the Combine relatively soon. You're going to get some unique interviews from there, but we'll keep doing our thing until training camp.
Oh, buddy, the interviews are keeping on coming. Curly Gittens
They're
Jr.,
keeping on coming.
James
I got one
Fletcher
coming.
Jr., Coulter Woodmansey, Taylor Powell, just to name a handful. We're going to try to give you guys our best all off season long.
Well, and speaking of rider departures, we got one with Tommy Neal in the can that's going to be out soon.
Hey.
I just think that if we want transparency from the CFL, we should just appoint AJ Allen commissioner, because you want to talk about transparency. He revealed all in that interview, to your point, about the emotions, about the conversations, walking you very much step by step through the process of free agency. If you want an inside look on what that's actually like when that window opens, I think you need to go and watch that full interview, because AJ Allen gives it to you unfiltered.
The CFL held its Invitational Combine in Waterloo on Friday. I will just say this once, this Invitational Combine is not an invitational event. It does not need to be called this. No, it's not.
It is invitational.
This should
They send
be
them
called,
invitations.
the CFL should rename this event the Pre-Combine. It's an event that is designed to qualify for the Combine for people who weren't initially invited.
No, it's not just about qualifying for the national.
Well, it's about performing.
It's about guys getting opportunities.
Yes, but the whole point is the Combine is invitational, and if you don't receive an invite to the Combine, then you go
get
to the
an invite to the invitational.
So just to confirm,
It shouldn't be called the Invitational.
Is
That's
an
the
invitational event, and the Invitational Combine. This is the pre-Combine. I think that's what it should be called.
You're just
Maybe I'll
salty
ask the commission about
to get an
this
invite.
at the actual Combine at Edmonton. But whatever you want to call it, the thing in Waterloo happened on Friday. JC, who stood out in the testing?
Well, there is some really explosive numbers that I'm sure we'll get into, but the guy who stood out to me that I want to highlight is SingFX receiver Zachary Hood. Not because he necessarily blew up the testing. He did fairly well across the board, but because one of the things that I like to look for when we see this invitational combine is improvement. A lot of these guys have tested already at the East-West Bowl last year. Teams have a baseline, and a lot of guys who didn't test very well at East-West Bowl will have that as a knock against them and get sent to the invitational because teams don't think they necessarily have the requisite athleticism. Hood was a dominant player for the X-Men in the AUS, over 2,600 career receiving yards out there in Atlantic Canada. But it's pretty common for AUS receivers, SingFX receivers, to not be that great of athletes and to go undrafted even if they are very productive. When I saw Hood's East-West Bowl results from a year ago, a 4.96 40, 3 reps on the bench, a 29-inch vertical, I very much put him in that category and almost dismissed him outright. He comes out here a year later, He's 10 pounds heavier. He goes up from 195 to 205. Instead of a 496, he runs a 469. He jumps 32 instead of 29, and he puts up 9 reps on the bench instead of 3, which is, not a massive amount by any stretch of the imagination, but that's 6 reps of improvement. This is clearly a guy who has the college production and who has now worked on himself enough, who has taken the feedback, taken that experience, and said, I'm going to get better, and has improved his athletic measurables to the point where I think he could be a late round draft prospect.
It's easy for me, boys. There was 3 quarterbacks at the event, but I'm not going to talk about Canadian quarterbacks. I'm going to talk about my University of Guelph brethren.
Homer.
Yes. Johnny Green. JC, you want to get it out the way already about his height?
Well, I'm just wondering, Guelph, I'm sure, is a fine institution, but were there ever classes on how to measure things? Like, you take out a tape measure, you shoot, this is how many numbers there are, this is how many inches are in a foot, because he's listed at 6'2", and he measures in at 5'11" and 3/4. So, there's some mistakes going over there with the Griffins, isn't there?
You know how it is in universities. I mean, this isn't just at Guelph. This is across Canada and the United States. Guys lying about their size. I get it. I've been there, done that. I think I wrote myself down at 6'1", when in reality, I'm pretty much the same height as Johnny Green. I looked him in the eyes. On a good day, he's probably 6 feet. He checked in at 5'11", 3/4, as you said, 202 pounds. Didn't participate in the bench press, but I thought that this guy, if he ran well, could have a chance to make an impact in the Canadian Football League and get a legit shot. And he did that. 4.52 in the 40-yard dash. He's a guy that has ball skills, tied the U Sports single game record with 4 interceptions last season in a game against Carleton. And I think he's got enough athleticism to warrant getting a shot. Whether he does or not, we'll have to find out, because some weird things happen sometimes with the CFL draft. But he recorded a 31.5-inch vertical jump, 9-foot, 7-inch broad jump, pretty much. He had an extra 1/8 of an inch there, 7.13 3-cone, and a 4.41 shuttle. So I think he's got the quickness. He's got that catch-up speed if you need it as a defensive back with that fast 40 time. He was 1/10 of a second off the fastest 40 of all the participants in the CFL Invitational Combine, or whatever we're going to call it. Let's call it the CFL Combine in Waterloo, just to make it easy. And I think he's a guy that boosted his stock testing. And if you look at the tape, I think it matches up. He's an intriguing guy. Maybe a little shorter than some prognosticators would like. JC Abbott would be one of those guys. But I think he's got enough to at least get a shot in the CFL.
To me, the top tester was Liam Talbot, running back out of Windsor. He won the 40-yard dash, 4.51, and he did it at 5'11", 210. And if you're running a 4.5 and a true electronically timed 4.5 at 210 pounds, I think that bodes well for your shot at the pros. I mean, the downside for Talbot is he plays a position where most teams do not want a running back. So that positionally will hurt him. There's good running backs in every draft who nobody wants. I remember this happening. It's almost 10 years ago now, but Johnny Augustine lit up, absolutely blew up the combine back in 2017. That was my first combine in person out of the University of Guelph, and nobody picked him in the whole draft. He went unselected. He got onto the top 20 after the combine, and nobody picked him. He goes back to school, goes pro in 2018, and I believe he was already in camp with the Bombers. And in one of the preseason games, I think he ripped off 2 touchdowns, and everybody was all abuzz, whoa, this kid's going to be the backup to Andrew Harris. It's going to be great. Well, post game, I remember him being interviewed by CJOB, and he said something to the effect, because he put up, again, really nice rushing production in the game, but he had a special teams tackle. And I remember Johnny being the rushing's great, but I'm really happy about the special teams tackle, because if I'm going to make this roster, it's going to be on special teams, and I got a tackle, which I'm this is the most CFL draft thing ever, is the Canadian running back being 100 yards and 2 tutties. Who cares? I made a tackle on a kickoff. I'm going pro, which is kind of funny, kind of sad. But regardless, Talbot, he's got enough size to play on teams, like a little undersized at 5'11", 210, but he benched 24, he verted 34 inches. Like, the testing is good across the board. He was never like a feature guy at Waterloo or Windsor, for the record. He shared that backfield with Weegbe Mambo, who's also in this draft class, as well as Andrew Delancey. So like his collegiate production is not off the charts, but he's got that breakaway speed, and he's somebody who I think can help. For the record, the 8 participants from the thing in Waterloo, whatever you want to call it, 2 of them we've mentioned. One of them is Talbot himself. Gianni Green out of Guelph is another. The other 6, Calgary receiver Matt Sibley, Windsor receiver Tyreek Quayson, Manitoba offensive lineman Victor Olanaran, Calgary offensive lineman Chris Pashula, Windsor defensive back Ethan John, and finally Queens defensive lineman Stephen Kepi. And Kepi jumped out to me as well as a guy who didn't have great testing on the quickness side, but ran a really good 40 for his size, weighed in at 245 pounds, ran a 4.70. So that could potentially be a bit of an oversized teamer. Like, whoa, 245 pounds coming down the field. 4.7 is kind of the cutoff for teams in the CFL. And doing that at 245 pounds could be intriguing. So congrats to all those who advance, and we're looking forward to seeing them, at least I could say for JC and myself, in person in Edmonton later this month. It's going to be a good time.
That's why you ran down that list. I don't know if you prefaced that properly, but that list you ran down are advancing to the CFL Combine. Did I miss that part?
Yeah, you missed it.
Oh.
I think you were a little vague with it.
Oh, well, my apologies. If
Just to make it clear.
Those are the 8 that the CFL announced are advancing from the non-invitational combine to the invitational non-invitational combine. How's that?
There's some interesting names on that list. I mean, you mentioned Talbot, 3 guys from Windsor getting elevated to the national combine, and I think a 4th in Colby Ginn, who absolutely blew up the testing as well. Whatever they're doing over there with the Lancers or wherever these guys are working out for their combine training, it's working because they were all near the top of the 40. They blew up a number of the different testing events, and 3 move on to the national. So a successful day for the Windsor program. And I think Victor Olanaran from Manitoba is a guy that, tests very poorly, but is a really good football player. And a lot of teams are very intrigued by this guy. He's certainly a name to watch as we go towards the national. It's now time for JC's random neg lister. And this week, we've got a small school offensive lineman that was just added to the Saskatchewan Roughriders neg list. That would be Thomas Perry from Middlebury College, Division III All-American. Thomas Perry. Every year, there's this all-star circuit. You go to the East-West Bowl or the Shrine Bowl, and there is a handful of really small school guys who get invitations to these events and become talking points. Well, last year at the East-West, it was Thomas Perry. He showed up 6'2", 317. Nobody knew who he was, and he really impressed in reps at center. He played guard at Middlebury College. Unfortunately, he's just a little bit too small for NFL standards. Didn't get a serious look. Went to minicamp with the Baltimore Ravens, but didn't get handed a contract. Clearly, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are interested here. He's a guy that when you watch Division III film, it's not known for its speed and athleticism, but you just see this guard running out there faster than the linebackers and the running backs and the DBs even, because he is so athletic and his feet move so well. I think he could have some success in training camp if the Riders are able to sign him.
Time for Hodge's heritage moment on this day in 2020. Norm Fieldgate passed away at the age of 88. The Regina native spent 14 seasons with the BC Lions, starting his career as a quote-unquote founding member of the team in 1954. He dressed for 223 games and was named a West Division All-Star 3 times, winning a Grey Cup with the Lions in 1964. Fieldgate was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in 1979 and had his number 75 retired by the team. Rest in peace, Norm Fieldgate, a CFL and BC Lions legend.
Let's get to the 3-minute drill. Former CFL Commissioner Randy Ambrosie, who some actually I've seen on social media think wasn't so bad after the changes that Stuart Johnston has forcefully put into the CFL, the structural changes I'm talking about. Ambrosie has been hired by the Siksika Nation to serve as the president and CEO for its business group. Is that a fit?
I, for one, am looking forward to the Siksika Nation's global initiative. 4 players with CFL ties, including current Ticats receiver Keaton Bruggeling, competed in the bobsleigh at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milano Cortina. How did they fare?
Not very well. In the 4-man bobsleigh, the best Canadian sled, which contained Shaq Murray-Lawrence and Keaton Bruggeling, finished 14th, which was the lowest finish
JC,
by
you're
a
harsh,
Canadian
bro.
since
They're using old
1994. I know. I'm
using
getting
old
there.
sleds.
Let's get these guys the funding they deserve. This isn't a sport that they're losing because they're bad athletes. They don't have the tech to keep up with the Germans, and they're falling further behind. Let's get these guys the money. Former CFL most outstanding defensive player Lorenzo Malden IV has pulled out of his contract with the United Football League's Louisville Kings and instead announced his retirement. How will you remember him, Duck?
It'll be for that 2022 season when he was absolutely unbelievable, one most outstanding defensive player, and I thought he might have had some more juice left, but clearly Lozo doesn't think so himself. The Edmonton Elks and Winnipeg Blue Bombers, according to our John Hodge, have been awarded an additional pick each in the 2026 CFL draft. I believe it's at the end of the second round. Is that a big deal?
I think it is. This is an initiative that's meant to reward the team that plays the most Canadians. This is a 3-year-old initiative now. It's the first time the Elks have gotten it. BC got it 2 times prior to this. This is Winnipeg's 3rd year in a row. So I think it's great to reward the teams with the most Canadians on the field in some way, shape, or form. And I think an extra draft pick is a good way to do it. Former CFL kicker and reigning CJFL Coach of the Year, Jamie Borum, has been dismissed by the Prince George Kodiaks. Does that make any sense?
From a football perspective, it certainly doesn't. He took the Kodiaks to the playoffs for the first time in their history. I don't know if there is more to come out about this story, but certainly the outpouring of love on social media from his players and the players' parents and people around the CJFL has been outstanding. It doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at it on paper. There was an apparent fire at McMahon Stadium on Sunday evening. Do you think it could improve the facade?
I think there were some people in Calgary quietly hoping that it burned the whole place down, assuming nobody would have gotten hurt. But that didn't happen. Seems like everybody is safe. So that part is great. But can I just say, I don't understand why people have media relations people employed anymore. Like, we've asked Calgary Fire for a statement on what happened, and it's been almost a week now. Nothing. Get with the
Maybe they
program
don't.
here.
You sure they've got somebody deployed?
Hold on. I don't think we
Yes.
asked Calgary Fire. We asked the city of Calgary. We asked McMahon Stadium's foundation multiple times. The Stampeders themselves were very quick to reply with no comment. They deferred us to the McMahon Stadium Society. We also asked the University of Calgary, and they got back to us saying, well, you should ask the fire department. And it's like, you're the primary leaseholder for you're the de facto owner of a building that had a fire, and you want us to talk to the fire? Like, what? If I break my ankle and you're like, hey, how's the ankle? I guess I should be like, you should talk to the doctor. Like, what are we doing? I don't understand it.
Get it together, people. 7 players have been selected for the 2026 CFLPA mentorship program, including what seems to be former quarterback Jeremiah Masoli, and I say seems to be because I don't want to imply that he's retired from playing. Do you think he would be a better fit for football ops, coaching, or broadcasting?
I mean, Jeremiah is a super well-liked and smart person in the league. So I think he could do anything. But the job that I hear most people speculating about is that he would be best as a coach. So this kind of comes back to the operations cap. Like, if a CFL team could just add Jeremiah Masoli to their staff, I think lots would be happy to do it. The question is, okay, well, who do you subtract? Especially when maybe your coaching staff already is smaller than you'd like. Like, to bring somebody in, you pretty much have to move somebody out. Like, it's a tricky situation, but wouldn't surprise me if we see Masoli coaching in this league at some point. In a conversation with you, JC, new Lions linebacker Darnell Sankey said BC will have the best defense in the CFL in 2026. Do you believe him?
No, I don't believe him. Their secondary is not good enough to hold that title yet. Yes, they've improved on the defensive line. Casey Sales is a good addition. Sankey is a great addition. But there are still question marks in the secondary. Until those are solved, you can't say the Lions are going to be the best in the league. Former Tiger Cats and Argonauts receiver Mike Morreale has expressed interest in working at the CFL League office. Would he be a valuable addition?
I think so. As an executive, he led the Canadian Elite Basketball League to actually getting off the ground, up and running, moved franchises around, and has got the league to a point where it's viable, and it's been around now for a number of years. They brought in the Elam ending, which is unique in basketball. So I think that could be a fresh voice, not even just at the league office, but if he was part of one of the franchises in the CFL in a front office capacity, not necessarily on the football side, but I think for business is sort of what Mike Morreale would be looking at. And I think he could bring some great, fresh ideas to the table. And he knows the Canadian markets from his time with the CEBL. So I think that could be a great hire for the league office or one of the teams out there. The Montreal Alouettes released American quarterback James Morgan, who made 2 starts last season. Did that surprise you, though, Hodge?
It didn't, because this is a guy who I think was a 4th-round pick to the New York Jets at a time. And so he kind of came in as a bit of an older, more experienced project. And the timeline for those guys is just going to be shorter, right, than some others. So he had a couple years to learn the CFL system. He came in. He didn't play at a terrible level, but he did not play at a high level. So it does not surprise me to see the Alouettes move on to other options. Offensive lineman Logan Taylor from Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, tested at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. Did he help his draft stock?
I don't think he helped his draft stock. I don't think he hurt it either. It was a pretty solid, expected performance across the board from Taylor, who has some really nice size as a guy who's played tackle, but probably projects inside to guard, where he played last season at Boston College. He'll be a day 3 pick in all likelihood. The Hamilton Tiger Cats have added quarterback Clayton Toon to their neg list. Dunk, will we see your arch nemesis in the CFL?
Look, I don't know if this guy is my arch nemesis. It's just more that the move by the Packers made no sense at the time, because Matt LaFleur had said that he wanted a quarterback that had experience in the scheme. So what do? They get rid of not only Taylor Algersma, Sean Clifford, who had even more experience, a full year in the scheme, at least a year, in Green Bay. And they're like, no, we're going to go bring in a guy who hasn't been in our offense at all and put him on the P squad. Made no sense to me. Now, I believe he's a free agent. Is that right, JC?
I believe so. Off the top of my head, yes. He's a free agent right now.
And could come up to the CFL. So I feel like we were proven right. Taylor Algersma should have been on that Green Bay Packers team. Would have shown, in my opinion, more upside than Toon. But who knows? Maybe we'll see them start head-to-head in the Canadian Football League. Imagine that.
Maybe we'll hear you change your tune.
Boo! Boo!
That was so bad.
Take
it
him off
was
the
good, Hodge. Do
stage.
you want me to launch into a Taylor Algersma update here? Is that what you're talking about? You want to change my tune? Want me to talk about Canadian quarterbacks?
I think you changing your tune would be changing to anything other than Canadian quarterbacks.
Hey, I haven't brought it up all podcast long, but let me just say, for the UFL people out there, especially in the media, 3DownNation are not haters for what's going on with Taylor Elgersma. His best shot to go back to the NFL is to play in the United Football League, potentially for the Baltimore Stallions. The Stallions, though, currently have Michael Harris, who is a washout in the Canadian Football League, above Taylor Elgersma on the depth chart. Make it make sense, okay? And for all the Americans, I hate saying this kind of stuff, but who don't understand, I'm not going to name any names here, Taylor Elgersma needs a work permit to be able to play in the United Football League. So understand the facts of the situation first. Rant over. Former JP Metris Trophy winner Giordano Vaccaro pumped out 28 reps on the bench press, 225 pounds on the bar at Purdue's Pro Day. Is he a lock to go in the first round in the 2026 CFL draft?
Vaccaro, as I'm told it's pronounced, not Vaccaro, is not only a lock to go in the first round, I think he's a lock to go with the top 4 picks. And I think it's possible, not saying it will happen, but I think it's possible that he could go first overall. Sean Thomas Erlington has announced his retirement after 8 CFL seasons. Not a bad career for an 8th round draft pick, hey?
Absolutely. When we talk about the draft and we get all the clowns on social media that say, why does the invitational matter? Or why does it matter who's picked in the 8th round? They're just getting cut in camp anyway. I present to you Sean Thomas Erlington, who's had a wonderful career, started many games in the Canadian Football League as a running back, and was a stud in a number of those games. It always matters when a guy gets an opportunity in pro football.
You know, I thought about it a couple times during the podcast, but it seems like the right chance to ask you both now. Could either of you ever have even done 1 rep of 225 pounds on the bench press?
God, no.
I mean, I've never trained for it. I ripped my shoulder out of its socket on the bench press in 2016, and I've not bench pressed since. I'll do push-ups, I'll do other kind of similar body weight exercises, but I'm not a high level performance athlete. I don't even pretend to be one on TV. So I can't really answer the question, but I'll never get back on the bench press, not after ripping my shoulder out.
How did you rip your shoulder out, bro?
Too much weight and bad form, just being a stupid young man. Yeah.
How much weight was on the bar?
I don't remember. I think it was probably $185. It wasn't 225, but it wasn't far
respectable
off. And I think I was repping it decently. I could have done 220, but I didn't have a spotter. I was alone. And yeah, I was just trying to crank out that extra rep, and I twisted, and I literally heard my shoulder rip out of the socket, and it still bothers me to this day. It's not, I mean, I got to be clear, I'm not in agony every day. I go weeks at a time without feeling any pain, but there will be, if I haven't moved it enough, if I haven't, whatever, I can still feel where it popped. Mind you, I also separated my other shoulder while playing football as a kid. So maybe my shoulders just suck. I don't know. But I did rip my shoulder out of its socket on the bench press, and that was the last day Hodge bench pressed. I'll never do it again.
I don't have any cool stories like Hodge. I'm just a weakling.
So you guys can't even bench press anywhere near your body weights.
Oh, God, no. No.
So now we're out here just body shaming. We're finishing the pod with body shaming.
No,
really?
No. It's not body shaming. I'm just stating a fact.
Oh, it's absolutely a fact. Now, I struggle with bench press more than other exercises. I have really poor shoulder flexibility. So I struggle even with just the bar to get it down to my chest. It's I can't get my arms back. They don't bend that way. But yeah, bench press, I got little noodle arms. You can make fun of me all you want, people.
Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Hodge and Abbott's Ailments. We'll see you all next week for another episode.